has Russia broken into downtown Avdiivka? And is Hungary betraying Ukraine from within the EU? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's December 16th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first taking a look at the control map, and there's two significant changes. First off, when we look into Avdiivka proper, you can see here as we zoom out, Russian forces really advancing through this forested belt. And this is critical because you can see there's this forested defensive belt or half crescent here where Russian forces have gone down this roadway here, but the Ukrainian forces have largely held them outside of this forested belt. And now you can see Russian forces have advanced through it, are now to the other side. There's no major defensive points between the Russian forces and Avdiivka, the city itself. And while the main heart of Avdiivka is actually above this hilltop here, there's no doubt that Russian forces have entered the city proper of Avdiivka. Now, this is a small salient breakthrough, right? And you can see these Russian forces are likely taking fire from both the Ukrainian forces here to the west, to the north, and to the south. So there's still, this is a long way from a secure position to launch attacks from. But it's nonetheless a sign that Russian forces, after taking an eye-popping number of casualties, are making progress in Avdiivka, slow though it may be. The other place where we've seen changes in the front line is actually near this town of Novomykhilivka. And you can see here Russian forces advancing through what's largely open field over the last 24 hours. And again, this is probably like 1.5 kilometers of distance covered, but you can see there's really very little of value that's changed hands. It's taken this from a contested zone to Russian controlled, but Russia doesn't control this forested area here. It certainly doesn't control any parts of Novomykhilivka, as well as any of this forested belt around here. So while it is Russian progress and it may portend a Russian effort to try to take Novomykhilivka, it's not necessarily indicative of some kind of meaningful, even tactical exchange of territory. Now, if they take Novomykhilivka, right, you see here, this can easily be used to kind of hopscotch through this reservoir river in this low ground from town to town. But of course, taking these sort of towns will be difficult because where there's a river, there's low ground, sort of by definition. So you're going to likely see Russian forces have to take the high ground from Ukrainian forces before trying to make any advances. So they've still got their work cut out for them, for sure, even as they enter Novomykhilivka. You're going to see probably a similar playbook. You can see town of Marinka, very similar, right? Also a grid layout of a town adjacent to a reservoir river. And this has been something that Russian forces have very systematically been pushing into. You could see them here trying to get some of this high ground near Marinka, right? They reach sort of the edge of the town here, and then advance through the town, right? I'm taking us back through time, as you can see here with Marinka, and then the final advances, right, with Russian forces taking the last of these city blocks, and then focusing on clearing out the last of the northern parts of the town. So they have a playbook for sure, and I think it's very reasonable to suspect that they might be running the same playbook near this Novomykhilivka. Looking over at the combat map, you could see minimal reporting, but a large number of air defense systems active in and around Crimea, which I thought was interesting, likely a sign that Ukrainian drone forces are again stepping up their activity. Russian Ministry of Defense claiming to have encountered 26 drones shot down over Crimea last night. So likely, again, a sign that for Ukraine, they are also reaching deep into Russia's logistical backfield, trying to disrupt Russia's ability to resupply and re-equip its troops. Again, to me, I see this as a winter phase where both sides are engaging in, or usually last year they were engaging in preparatory work. Ukraine still seems to be on that preparatory back foot, trying to rebuild, redeploy its forces, and grind down Russian logistics. But in turn, you have the Russian forces pushing hard and being on the offense. Guys, if you're like me, the holidays are an extremely busy time and you need all the energy and focus you can get. And if you're an energy drink guy, I would encourage you to consider the alternative, Strike Gum. This is my company. I designed this gum with a manufacturer in Denver, Colorado, right here in the USA. And what we did is find a way to take a 0 sugar piece of gum and concentrate inside of it 90 milligrams of caffeine. That is as much as a Red Bull, as much as an Amp Energy, but 0 sugar, and 100 milligrams of alpha GPC for added mental clarity. So if you're interested in checking this out, it is on strikegum.com. And for those of you that want to do the math, energy drinks, $4 a pop. I was just in my gas station the other day and I picked one up, and you can get the 5 times as much caffeine in just a single pack of Strike Gum, and it's only $5.99. And if you're someone with a serious energy drink addiction, you can check out the tray, 75 pieces of gum, which is like $300 worth of energy drinks for $69.99, even less because we have military discounts. Best of all, of course, 50% of the profits from this first production run are going to be donated to charities that support Ukrainian civilians. So check us out, strikegum.com. Okay. Here's what I thought was interesting as well. So Putin recently had what's sort of like his version of State of the Union. They have some bizarre name for it. Oh yeah, the direct line, a sort of blend between a State of the Union and a public comment press conference. But what I thought was interesting is that the Kremlin, of course, is sort of playing fast and loose with some of the numbers around this, around the Russian forces in combat. Putin said that there's 600,000 Russian personnel in the, quote, combat zone. When discussing the length of the front line, right, Ukrainian officials estimate there's about 400,000 Russian military personnel in Ukraine, at least as of September. But Putin's figure likely rolling in all military personnel, including mobilized, contract soldiers, volunteer, irregular formations, and some rear area support formations. Right, Russian authorities use combat zone and special military operations zone interchangeably. But what's fascinating is, as we've talked about, while Putin is publicly exaggerating the number of Russian troops in the combat zone, a lot of Russian troops in the combat zone themselves have reported that the military is creating this shield of plausible deniability. They are refusing to give them written orders stating that they are deployed to the combat zone. They refuse to stamp their military passports certifying that they have entered the combat zone. So it's very bizarre. It's like Putin wants to acknowledge the total number of soldiers serving, but what they don't want to do is actually be accountable to all of those soldiers, because that would entail providing them with benefits, pensions, pay, and give credence to their claims. And it would also mean that the Russian government would have to, on some level, publicly assume responsibility for the large number of casualties, given that supposedly up to 300,000 Russian soldiers are not coming home from this conflict, or have not come home from this conflict. So it's a real interesting dichotomy between the Kremlin's unwillingness to own the individual soldier in the combat zone, but still try to own the collective of all the Russian military operating there. Certainly, Russia's goal is to look like the vastly superior force, massively capable. And it's true, the Russian military likely outnumbering the Ukrainian military by a good margin, but Ukrainian military, of course, pivoting to the defensive, relying heavily on high-tech tools, and having somewhat better training protocols thanks to their Western partners, mean that it still remains a pretty even fight. Finally, the last piece of news is Hungary. Hungary is an EU country that recently blocked 50 billion euros in EU aid for Ukraine because Ukraine was approved to engage in a basic level of membership talks with the EU. Now, what bothers me, of course, is that talk is cheap, guys, and entering talks formally or informally is just that. It just means you are in the room having a chat. Just like, if you can get coffee with Jeff Bezos, it doesn't mean you're in danger of owning Amazon. So I think this is a little bit of hyperbole, but the important thing is that 50 billion, that's 10 times what, 20 times, I think, what Biden approved for Ukraine during Zelensky's visit. That 50 billion has been held up by Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. And it's a huge blow to Ukraine. It's also a real sign that perhaps Orban is not as firmly in the EU camp as one might think. But again, it sounds like European leaders in Brussels really disappointed to see that. Certainly Ukrainian forces very disappointed to lose out on some essential aid. Anyway, guys, that is all I had for you. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the members of combatvetnews.com. Thanks to our Colonel tier members. Thanks to our Lieutenant tier members. I could not do this without you guys. Thank you so much. See you in the next one. Hit like and subscribe. Cheers.